Oh my gosh. Listen, thank y'all so much. Like, I can't, excuse me, I can't even believe I made it this far. I really can't. I really can't. And in all honesty, I got to thank every last one of y'all from the top to the bottom, to all the homies that I tagged. Thank y'all for y'all support and everything. I know I might not be active as much on Discord and stuff. I have been a little, sick and everything, but thank y'all so much for this support. And to all the subs, thank y'all for y'all support, y'all comments, both good and bad. But today, for y'all 5K special, it's only a part one. So, art creatures in Monster Hunter, can they survive? And again, only part one. This means that part two is going to be great. And keep in mind, I do not mind doing modded creatures or creatures that were in the voting polls but have never got it. Just send me the link to the creature and I will gladly do it. Now keep in mind, I will also be doing a solo one for the Evil Rex, the Evil Giga, and the standard Art Giga. And I'm going to put the Art Giga in one of the toughest areas possible just to see how he does in it. So believe it or not, all the art creatures would definitely scale to the Wyvern, which is around the city block tier. So again, be sure to comment down below, like and subscribe, and share with your friends. And remember, I will still do modded creatures if you guys send me the link. And yes, full credit to those who obviously made these creatures, obviously. But again, without further ado, thank you all for the 5K. I really do appreciate it. But today, we're going to see if the Rex, Deinosuchus, Ravager, Woolly Mammoth, and Rock Drake all could survive in this environment. We'll be throwing in 20 each. All right, y'all know the standard number is 20. So we'll be throwing them into these environments specifically, and some of them will have different endings. So without further ado, let us begin. Go off with one of the greatest menaces to ever do it, Deinosuchus. Man, I remember when this was a modded creature, and it was just like, I think it was barely used, to be honest, but then it grew. It became better than what it was before. And the fact that Deinosuchus still has that gigabyte and it's above even the Rexes now, like standard vanilla Rexes, probably even the Evil Rex. But again, I think I've beaten Evil Rexes or beaten an Evil Rex or using Evil Rex to be a Deinosuchus, but that's besides the point. Today we're going to put it in the flooded forest. So obviously you know what we're going to do. Food, obviously, competition, and then the ending or the end results, right? Is this creature going to be with the hunter, or is this creature going to evolve on its own to take up a different niche? So without further ado, let's talk about it. And keep a reminder that no elder dragons are in this region, and no elder dragon level monsters if they can't handle it. All right, so let's actually begin. Part one, food. Every creature that Deinosuchus would eat. Now, starting off with the more common animals, or the more common prey items, or basically the standard prey animals, we have Bullfango, which is, everyone's favorite daily dose of bacon. The next one we have is Slagtoth, which actually would draw in a lot more competition, considering Slagtoth is kind of like the preferred bread and butter of a lot of these bigger wyverns, including some of the bird wyverns as well. Hermitaurs, oh yeah, Gigabyte is getting through that shell. Probably through the skeletal remains as well. But it is what it is. Same thing with the Centauriers, or the Centaurs, if you will. And yeah, again, just some extra crab meat. And keep in mind, Deinosuchus, like every other art creature, does have pack-based behavior or group-based behavior. Meaning if one gets hurt or one gets attacked, they all form and mob up, especially when it comes to babies. So again, any creature attacking a baby Deinosuchus is not going to go well. But let's talk about some of the bigger prey items, right? The Roggies, especially Great Roggy, is definitely going to be a prey animal. And again, you might say, oh, well, it has poison. Yep. Y'all know art creatures could just move through that like it's nothing, right? And keep in mind, Deinosuchus is immune to like narcotic effects. So yeah, tranquilizing it is not really the best way to go, considering its armor is so thick. And its armor is so thick, it may not even be affected by poison. But again, with Great Roggy coming down to drink from the larger streams rather than being up there in the, smaller stream-like areas, yeah, it's definitely on the menu. Pookie Pookie. Again, this is likely going to be a crossing moment where Pookie could likely be a little too lazy to walk across the more landfill areas to probably get to the fruits and nuts that it needs. But again, still a prey animal if it gets too close to the water. Kuliaku. Yeah, buddy, you put yourself in danger when you're trying to steal eggs. You do it to Rathian, and a Deinosuchus is not going to be the best one to go against. You're getting eaten. But the next one I actually like to talk about, really, is Azeros. As Azeros could definitely be a common prey item just as much as the slag toss. Now, Azeros, believe it or not, does have a unique diet of a standard bear. However, it's more in the, I guess you could say, carnivorous department than in the omnivorous department. And this is because it likes to fish. And the flooded forest is full of plenty of fish that Deinosuchus could either eat or kind of just leave alone. I actually do see him leaving alone, considering not a lot of the creatures will go after fish unless they're like a main part of their diet. So believe it or not, Azeros may become a preferred food item. And if there are any honey things or, beehives near the shoreline, yeah, Azeros actually tends to get distracted so much in honey that it leaves itself vulnerable to Zinogre. So a Deinosuchus is going to be like, hey, this sounds pretty delicious to me. A nice bear. Oh, he ain't moving. I got him, right? Next up is Daimon Hermiter and Shogun Centaurier. Now, while these guys would definitely be difficult for a Deinosuchus by itself, keep in mind, again, they live in groups. And they're going to mob them. And Shogun Centaurier seems like the one to try and go after a baby. But again, you just messed around and found out, so you're getting eaten. Bishaten also crosses the waterways in order to get its fruit. And it's very possible it washes its fruit as well, which can become a very deadly occurrence. Meaning that, but you better find the nearest waterfall and hope a Deinosuchus ain't under it or in it in general. So yeah, Bishaten, definitely a wonderful prey animal. Now, Somnicath. Somnicath was actually very difficult for me to decide whether it be a prey animal or competition. But believe it or not, the only way it could really get by is with its spikes. And considering it spends most of its time in the water, yeah, Deinosuchus would definitely be able to get it. I could see Deinosuchus ambushing it from the point where its head and using a gigabyte to just crunch on the top of it. It sounds brutal, but again, we have to remember these are still animals that hunt and even eat their prey alive most of the time. So believe it or not, yeah, Somnicath is definitely going to be a prey animal. So believe it or not, I think that really does do it. Albeit I could definitely say, even with the competition part, these guys could easily become food because, again, Deinosuchus, or basically every arc carnivore, does not discriminate. The only thing they don't do is really attack their own kind unless they're dead. And even then, that is a rare occasion apparently now. I've seen moments where they just don't even eat their own species, even when they're dead. So it's very interesting. Now, this is really going to be based off of monsters that would directly compete with Deinosuchus, and I'm going to do that for the other monsters. So let's talk about the first one. Rathian, definitely the safest one on this list, as she could easily just drop down and get a Slagtoth before a Deinosuchus could. Plus, there are much other animals she could easily prefer to eat. Jurassic is definitely going to try to be competing for the waterways. While one-on-one with a Deinosuchus, you could probably say it could I would probably say try its best against it, maybe using its mud to slow it down and maybe get a win that way. But Jurassic just isn't built like that. Deinosuchus is too durable, and again, if they so choose, he's a prey animal. It could just be a day you want to eat a Jurassic, Jerry? Heck yeah, Mike, let's go get him. Next up is Anjanath. Now, Anjanath is definitely the one to mess around and find out. He is a little bit too aggressive and a little bit belligerent when it comes to hunting other animals, and will even eat other smaller animals. So I could definitely see him trying to snatch a baby Deinosuchus, or maybe even a juvenile one, but then a parent comes in, or the juvenile can actually be formidable enough to hold off an Anjanath until a parent or a group of them simply arrives and makes Anjanath their next meal. Now, Anjanath would definitely be able to get a offspring if it really just bolts in and just doesn't try to fight, but again, if it does, it's pretty much dead. Now, Almudron is probably the biggest competitor next to another one, but again, I definitely think it is the second place on this list here because, again, it is more a solitary creature, unless the more otter theory does ring true and they do live in like family units. So, if they do live in family units, then yeah, they have a good chance of being the top tier predator and kind of just going 50-50 with the Deinosuchus. However, alone, it's not going to really do too well, but its earth manipulation can definitely block off Deinosuchus from getting into his territory. But now, Royal Ludroth. This one is likely going to be the biggest competitor for the Deinosuchus, as they pretty much live kind of the same ways. They inhabit waterways. They have multiple groups of, other members of their species to really take care of or look after. And Ludroth is actually probably a good counter to the Gigabyte because of its mane actually being able to expand and likely withstand a large majority of damage when it comes to the Ludroth, or when it comes to the Deinosuchus' main bite. The Gigabyte might be able to is definitely going to dent that mane and probably even pierce it. But at the end of the day, Deinosuchus definitely gets a solid 10 out of 10 for competition. Now, how does Deinosuchus fare in this verse at the end of the day, and what was his ending? Well, believe it or not, Deinosuchus would definitely be tamed by the hunters, or by the guilds in general. And believe it or not, Deinosuchus would likely be one of the most useful creatures in the Monster Hunter verse, considering they can inhabit waterways, streams, and even some parts of the ocean. You can actually cross the ocean with these guys. These guys would be perfect as ship transporting guardians. And believe it or not, likely be good combat mounts as well, if in the right area. Probably more sea-based combat mounts than anything, but at the end of the day, you guys get what I mean. And believe it or not, them being able to combat the likes of Legiacris and Plesioth would not be too far-fetched, and even a group of them would likely be a huge help against some of the Elder Dragons like Cadeus and Nakarkos, especially with a hunter backing them up. And considering the sheer fact that we do put saddles on them, this does mean that they're likely going to get armor, because the guild doesn't even leave the Palmuts lacking. It doesn't leave the Palicos lacking. Even the Sacred, which I actually think it should have armor, because again, it makes more sense. I'm just saying. But again, design details and everything, sometimes it just doesn't work. But at the end of the day, yeah, Deinosuchus is definitely going to be probably one of the most better creatures for Ark, especially for a lot of those coastal villages that do suffer attacks from things like Legiacris, Plesioth, or any Leviathan. These guys would definitely be able to make mincemeat of those Leviathans and be able to get a meal at the end of the day. But now we have to move on to the issue we have on this list is the Ravager. Now, the Ravager may benefit the most out of most of the creatures on this list, or most of the original 5 that I'm using, because he is a, pack-based predator. So he does get the pack boost, he does get the bleeding damage, and we are going to give them the ability to pretty much climb, considering they were actually supposed to, I believe. I think even their Dawser states that they can climb. And keep in mind, the Ravagers are I would probably say the second toughest land predator in the aberration. The reason why I'm saying second toughest is because, the Reapers are kind of like the more subterranean areas. You then have the Basilisks, which are on top, and then you have the Ravager, going by the original game. So today we're going to put them in probably one of the easiest areas I would definitely say is capable of, or any predator is capable of surviving, that being the Rotten Vale. Now, the reason why I say the Rotten Vale is the easiest place for any predator to survive is because it's literally a pile of corpses, which I don't even understand how Savage Devil Joe even exists in the New World because of the Rotten Vale. I mean, the ground is literally covered in blood, meat, and corpses. Maybe the effluvium kind of leaves a bad taste in some of the monsters' mouth, but we also know that some of these monsters aren't far above scavenging on what's on the floor. Come on now, let's just be for real here. Now, again, the Rotten Vale actually provides a decent ecosystem for the Ravagers, considering they do live in the rougher environments, or the roughest environment imaginable, that being Aberration. Or would you say Extinction is the roughest environment? Let me know what you guys think down below, if you think Aberration or Extinction are some of the hardest environments for a creature to live in. But with that being said, let's talk about food. Most Swan is easily one of the few creatures that a Ravager can easily pick off. I mean, yeah, they do live in large groups, but again, they're not they're not really a match for a pack of Ravagers. And keep in mind, again, we are doing like 20 creatures each. So a pack of Ravagers would be able to easily dominate and eat a Most Swine, or even a group of them, in all honesty. And to be fair, I think that would actually be pretty tragic. Imagine an entire group of Most Swines just getting massacred by the Ravagers because they all need to feed. I think it just sucks. Now, another creature I could never see the Ravagers eating are the Gyros. Now, the Gyros to themselves are also predators, which is, not a bad thing, but at the same time, they are lesser predators. And I would even say they're lesser predators than the Ravagers. Now, yes, they do have their paralytic spit and stuff, and they do live in groups, but it's not as big as the Ravagers. The Ravagers can live up into average packs of 5 to possibly even more, while Gyruses live in the groups up to 3 and maybe even several when it comes to a Great Gyros. Speaking of which, Great Gyros will also be on the menu. Yeah, I definitely say a pack of Ravagers will be able to mob and overwhelm a Gyros, even with this paralytic poison and stuff like that. It would be able to, they would overwhelm it very quickly and just straight up maul it with their bone-crushing jaws, their, bleed effect, their grappling claws and stuff like that. They would actually be able to overwhelm Great Gyros. Now, other than the fact that Rattlebond would be next, I do think that the Ravagers would likely not take on some tougher monsters. But again, we know Arc creatures are just like flat out aggressive. Plus, we do know Ravagers can take on things like Carnotauruses, Stegosauruses, and stuff like that. And even a decent group of them should be able to take out a Basilisk if really hungry. So, Rattlebond, honestly, should be on the menu. I do think a pack of these guys can just swarm and overwhelm a Rattlebond, even a fully grown one. Now, the next one is actually pretty interesting because we do have the fact that Bomboro does visit the Rotten Vale, and this may even include herds of Bomboro as well, as we do know that most of these brute wyverns or most of these herbivorous monsters do live in herds, with the only exception being Diablos, which come together during mating seasons to actually, compete for females and then fight the female in order to get the cheeks. So you already know. So Bomboro, believe it or not, I think a fully grown male Bomboro might be too much, considering it's just more physically powerful than a Rattlebond. However, some juveniles or maybe some females and young adults would definitely be up their speed. But if they're desperate enough, I do think that they would be able to take on and even eat a Bomboro. But let's move on to likely predators at this point, because I don't see them being able to mainly take these guys on, albeit it is possible, considering right now, even in wilds, we have things like Cranedoffs and Tailloffs that are able to take on the larger monsters and even damage and stagger them, or even flat out just knock them on their side. So yeah, pretty interesting. Now, Tigrex is kind of obvious. I mean, it will likely eat other monsters, so getting into a turf war with a Tigrex means you've got a 50-50 chance of being eaten. Acidic Glavenus is definitely going to be someone that even eats like live prey. It's actually one of the few hunters in the Rotten Vale, which is just like, yeah, he can scavenge, but he actually prefers his prey fresh. Not sure how that works in a corpse field, but hey, it is what it is. But believe it or not, Acidic Glavenus is likely just too dangerous for them to overcome. And believe it or not, there's no way you can tell me a group of Ravagers is beating a Acidic Glavenus, especially when it has its tail unsheathed and everything. It would likely result in the same thing as a Great Gyros, but we already know that was censored for the reason. Now, the next one I would actually be a little controversial about is Odogaron, the apex of the Rotten Vale. And this is actually pretty interesting. Bone-crushing jaws, bleed and piercing claws, and an acute sense of smell. Odogaron is one of the more, I would definitely say it's a more perfect predator, if you will. And again, that might sound like me glazing, but keep in mind, I think the same of other monsters like Barioth and even the likes of Almudron as well. So I do give them credit as like perfect predators in my opinion, because they are just so well adapted to their environments and even other environments as well, because Odogaron's speed and agility are definitely going to give it a lot of trouble. And I could definitely see Ravager packs possibly just going away once they hear Odogaron. Now, believe it or not, what's the ending going to be for the Ravager, considering the fact that they are going to have to overcome a lot of these predators in order to survive? And here's the thing, right? I'm actually going to say they evolved to have a symbiotic relationship, and hear me out, with Odogaron. Okay, now hear me out on this one. It makes perfect sense, right? Considering the fact that Ravagers are intelligent, all right, and they should be able to do something similar to what the Basilosaurus can do. Now, I'm not sure how the symbiotic relationship would form, but I do think this is the best way for Ravagers to kind of differentiate themselves there. And keep in mind, there are symbiotic relationships in Monster Hunter. We have Zinogre and the Fulgur bugs, which is a pretty common relationship, right? But we have Australian, who will be getting his own video pretty soon, and the star butterflies, which is a very similar relationship to Zinogre and Australian. Well, Zinogre and the Fulgur bugs, excuse me. Then we have Mammoth, who has a relationship or a symbiotic relationship with Popo. Popo will actively defend Mammoth calves from Tiger Rex, while Mammoth does defend the herd from Tiger Rex as well when she's around. Gorembazuru also has a symbiotic relationship with the herbivores of its regions. And then there's also Slice Magar, who will also be getting a video as well, also has a symbiotic relationship with the herbivores of its region. So Odogaron forming a symbiotic relationship or the Ravagers forming a symbiotic relationship can easily benefit both. Not only will Odogaron have a pack to back it up, but it's very likely its offspring could be reared among the Ravagers as well, likely having things like den units as well, and being able to, well, go out for food as well. So a hunting group that goes with a Odogaron, a den unit that sits back and takes care of the cubs and watches the territory. So believe it or not, this would be the ending I would definitely give the Ravagers, as a form of symbiotic relationship with a Odogaron, making the monster a lot more deadlier, and likely meaning Odogaron would have to bulk up and likely become bigger as well. So, believe it or not, we're just going to move on to the next monster. Number 3, we have the Rex, one of the original kings of Ark. Unfortunately, it just hasn't received much love lately. Oh wait, we got the evil Rex, never mind. But the original vanilla Rex was definitely a go-to for a lot of players. And believe it or not, I actually prefer it and the Spinosaurus over the Giga any day of the week. I even prefer the Allo over the Giga any day of the week. So believe it or not, we're going to be putting 20 Rexes in the Jurassic Frontier. I know, so, predictable, right? Using the Jurassic Frontier. But believe it or not, the environment itself is actually pretty interesting, to say the least. It's one of the few areas I can definitely see like Rexes pretty much dominating and even pretty much claiming for their own, other than the ancient forest, of course. But I just kind of want to use a different environment. So the Jurassic Frontier definitely has plenty of food, water, and a lot of shelter for the Rex in general. But we do know Rexes are some of the most adaptable creatures in Ark, in at least one of them. So with that being said, here we obviously have an extensive list of monsters that were in the Jurassic Frontier, and obviously we will not be counting Elder Dragon level monsters or Elder Dragons in general here. So believe it or not, let's begin starting off with food. Everything that Ark Rex could eat here, and pretty much just use as game in general, or pretty much just use for, having their children hunt as well. So obviously we got Renoflos, which is basically the miniature or stronger version of a Protoceratops. Then we have the Gargoyles, but this may lead into competition with the likes of Zinogre because it's its favorite food for some reason. I mean, hey, who wouldn't want chicken every day? I'm just saying. But we have probably one of the more satisfying herbivores, and one I think does need to return and needs another monster on the sauropod basis, that being Laranov, which is just a mountain of meat. But now on to, official monsters that the Rexes would definitely eat. I definitely could see Congalala. I don't think the stench is really going to bother them that much, considering the sheer fact that, Ark Rexes can be fine even with the likes of a Lymantria dust in their eyes and stuff. So believe it or not, Congalala's stench may not be too bad, but I can definitely see it being like, oh heck no, we gonna hunt you once a week. Next one up is definitely Great Macau. Oh, and Conga as well. It's definitely the Macau and Great Macau as well. They're both just smaller bird wyverns, and obviously the jumping dog wyvern. I would like to see him in the wild. Yeah, I think he would actually be a good little test check, as well as Mizutsune for wilds. I did fight against Mizutsune. It was pretty much a good chance for a lot of skill based checks and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely gotta say it's definitely one of my favorite matches. Gypsaros is definitely on the menu, albeit I could definitely see Gypsaro using its flash to like get away from the Rexes. Gypsaros is really not trying to fight a lot of things. But if it does play dead, I could definitely see the Rexes just taking advantage of it. Like, oh, it's just gonna lay down and die for me. Okay, well, I'll just grab it, crush it to make sure it's dead, and then drag it back home. I mean, it's like the dumbest thing you could possibly do. Next off, we definitely have Tetsukabra. Now, while Tetsukabra may actually be the safest one, I definitely think any Tetsukabras that are more out of their water area trying to prey on anything else is definitely going to find itself on the menu. You see, the thing about Tetsukabra is the fact that they are kind of aggressive, and this may even lead to their own downfall. But again, in terms of like territorial disputes, they would actually be pretty rare. But I could definitely see a Rex taking advantage of an off-guarded Tetsukabra for a meal. Next off is Yankaku, and in all honesty, why not? I mean, Yankaku just gets eaten by everything, from Rathians to even its own cousin in Yangaruga. It's just like, this dude gets no break. Najarala hunted, Nargacuja hunted. This dude gets no break. And this is why they're actually a lot more aggressive in wilds than in, you know, some of the older games. And this is because they get hunted by everything. Everything wants to eat them. Everything gets a piece of them. Next up, we have Volvidon. Now, again, obviously, it does have the stench ability, and it does have the shell. However, the fact that they can actually bite through, or the Rexes can bite through Doedicarus shells and still harm them, yeah, I don't think Volvidon shell is going to hold up too much to a Rex's jaws. Plus, again, Rexes might actually just grab it, crush it, and then just go on, considering the fact that Arc Rexes would have pound for pound a much stronger bite force than even an average T-Rex. I would probably even say even Jurassic Park's T-Rexes, which have a much stronger bite force. Next up, we have the Celtis Queen. Now, believe it or not, the Celtis Queen is a very interesting one. I don't see her being a prey item too often, but it was just kind of like, well, she's there, we might as well get it. And pretty much her tail is going to be a very big problem. Now, again, she can be considered an apex in her own right, but again, against a group of Rexes, I don't think it's just going to go too well. So, believe it or not, they actually do get along or get well fed here, pretty much honesty. In all honesty, they do get well fed here. But now let's talk about competition and possible threats. And starting off, we have Malfestio. Again, another creature that needs to be in wilds. But again, I do think the Scarlet Forest might be overfilled at that point, because again, too many monsters are in there. And believe it or not, I do think Malfestio is one of the few creatures that can honestly avoid the Rexes entirely. They can easily swoop down, grab their prey, and might just, you know, straight up leave. Because again, Malfestio is not really someone to pick a fight. Plus, it can also use its wings and its abilities to simply daze the Rex and just simply get out of there. Next up, Glavenus. Now, this one is definitely direct competition, as I do think a group of Rexes would definitely be able to bully a Glavenus off of its kill and possibly even out of its territory. However, Glavenus with a superheated tail is definitely going to be a problem. While I do think they are in the same tier, Glavenus's weaponry just kind of gives it an edge in a one-on-one situation, and maybe even a two-on-one situation against a Rex, in all honesty. The Rexes don't have too much versatility going for them, which actually does hinder them here. Next up is Nargacuja, and believe it or not, this is one of the few situations where I do believe Nargacuja would kind of just be left alone and likely leave the Rexes alone as well, because again, I don't see it really attacking a pair of Rexes, but I also see it being able to opportunistically snatch a youngster and definitely leave. But it's also very possible it may not even bother them. Next off, Zinogre. Now, Zinogre is definitely in that weird state where he can definitely go toe-to-toe with the Rexes and win, and then we have a situation where it may not be worth it. Because again, most of these predators don't really bother fighting each other to the death unless it's absolutely necessary, or unless your name is Devil Joe and you know good and well you got to eat something to survive. So, you know, that other predator over there just looking mighty juicy and mighty thick at the same time, but that's besides the point. Zinogre definitely wouldn't bother the Rexes, and the Rexes likely wouldn't bother Zinogre unless it really came down to it. Next off, we have the Royal Duo. Now, Rathalos and Rathia are in a very interesting predicament, as if Rathia is not nesting at high altitudes, then yeah, she's in direct competition with them, and that's not going to be good at all. But again, if she rests at higher altitudes or nests at higher altitude, she should be fine. And then we have Rathalos, who's just
I definitely could see it definitely treating the Rexes like an early Anjanath as well. Now, believe it or not, the Rexes actually do fine when it comes to competition, as they've dealt with creatures with hacks and abilities like the Spinos, the Paraceratheriums, Deinosuchus, and etc. And while, yes, Deinosuchus is above them, they actually do pretty well. Now, as for their ending, I'm gonna probably do the same thing with Deinosuchus, in all honesty. They would be excellent combat mounts for the Rexes or the Hunters in guilds, likely being kingdom defenders as well, so meaning they could likely interfere or intervene in things like Lao Sheng Lung's rampage or many creatures attacking the kingdom. Plus, with the fact that they also will be wearing armor, it definitely benefits them at the end of the day to be a hunting companion. So essentially, you would have your new Palarex as well, albeit it's just not as versatile. They may actually develop stronger muscles and stronger jaws, but at the end of the day, they do thrive.
So dino number 4, we have the Mammoth, and this one will actually be the shortest one, believe it or not, as the Mammoth kind of serves both purposes. It could easily be a creature used for mainly gathering, but I definitely see this being more of a travel creature, but one of the more beneficial ones. And believe it or not, being located in the Arctic regions in general, yeah, this thing is gonna thrive. In all honesty, having 20 mammoths in the Arctic, honestly, it just fits. I think they're actually gonna do very well. Probably far better than even the Ravagers. So we're gonna put them in the Arctic Ridge, which is one of the few beneficial places for any Arctic creature, and I mean any. There's actually a good series of networks of caves where the mammoths can travel through, but again, this could put them in, I guess, a direct line of fire with another predator. And then the mammoths are pretty simple, and pretty much all herbivores and arcs are simple. They eat just about anything related to vegetation, even honey, even. So it's not hard to really, get these mammoths anywhere when it comes to like food and stuff. And in all honesty, I do think herbivores are vastly easier to do than carnivores, because you have to calculate how they can take them down, how they can, take down certain prey animals. Then you have to go into, oh, well, this animal is normally hunted by this other predator, so now this is going to put them in direct competition, etc. So believe it or not, obviously the rules are simple, and this is actually one of the few cases where I will allow Elder Dragon level monsters, but I will not allow Elder Dragons, okay? So the first predator, which isn't likely going to be the easiest for them, is definitely Kezu. Kezu isn't a big prey specialist. It pretty much delves into small prey. So I don't really see attacking like the adult mammals, or adult mammoths, excuse me. But I could definitely see attacking like infant or baby mammoths. But again, keep in mind that not only do mammoths have like this small pack boost, but they also have the ability to depower their opponents and make them weaker. So yeah, Kezu's not really going to be a problem, even with its electricity. Imagine having an electrical blast, but it gets weakened very easily. Gaiadromes are pretty easy for them as well. They could easily pick them up in their trunk and just kind of fling them across the field like a whole football. So there's really not going to be anything that a Gaiadrome could really do. They could definitely, if they get a mammoth by themselves, I think that there's a good possibility that they could take it down, but there's also a possibility the mammoth could just start like grabbing and just start ragdolling one. And you might say, oh, well, they're able to take out Popo, but keep in mind they take out Popo when they're by themselves or they're isolated from the herd. Now, let's get into some real threats like Blangoga. Now, Blangoga are definitely going to be able to take on and take out a mammoth. I mean, they're highly capable of taking out Popo by themselves. And believe it or not, they are one of the more dangerous monsters in the region, to the point where they should be able to fight against the likes of Barioth and Tiger-X in order to defend their troops. Now, again, yes, they do have a high mortality rate because they are more, carnivorous than the likes of Kongalal and stuff like that. But again, they are pretty formidable in their own right. Next off, we have, obviously, Barioth, the apex of the region. Ambush, GG after that. So it's pretty simple for Barioth. I'm not going to really dive into him too much because he just
would eat just about everything and anything in the region. And again, the mammoths are able to weaken him, but that's if he doesn't ambush them and tries to direct attack. Now, their biggest threat is definitely going to be Tiger Rex. And this is because Tiger Rex actually loves mammal meat. No diddy. Now, the reason why is pretty much unknown, but it seems he does love to eat like gammoth calves and popos and stuff like that. So having mammoths or adding mammoths actually does kind of just fuel Tiger Rex's desire to eat mammal-based monsters even more. It's very possible he might be the main predator of Bonboro as well. However, the mammoths actually do have a saving grace here, and I do think they would actually bond with Gammoth. Now, hear me out, right? Like I said in my Ravager part, it is possible for these art creatures to form symbiotic relationships. Popo already has a symbiotic relationship with Gammoth to the point where they will make sure that they take care of their calves. But in turn, Gammoth provides the protection needed against people, against monsters like Tiger Rex and obviously Barioth as well. Because even if Barioth is a master at the ambush, it does not have the capabilities to take out a Gammoth, especially a fully grown one. So, believe it or not, I do think with mammoths and popos also being in that same group, Gammoth's birthing rate or Gammoth's calf rate as well would actually skyrocket, meaning we would actually have Gammoth giving, not, I wouldn't say birth a lot more, but their young would be raised successfully. Because imagine trying to go against a herd of creatures that can weaken you. This will likely include physical strength as well, considering they are able to weaken a Rex's bite and stuff. So, believe it or not, mammoths being able to debuff and depower an opponent would definitely be beneficial. Even to the hunters and guilds as well, which would mainly use the mammoths for likely wood collecting and transportation. Kind of like the same with popos as well, considering they are known to domesticate the likes of Popo and Aptonoth and possibly even Apsaros as well. Believe it or not, this would actually be beneficial due to the fact that not only would mammoths be a very good way for not only them to understand Gammoth and maybe even domesticate Gammoth as well, but this will also help them, I guess you could say, benefit from an easier way of transportation or transporting goods through Arctic regions without having to need or having to deal with predators. Because imagine understanding now that these creatures can weaken you at any point during the fight. It would just make it so much of a hassle. I think the mammoths would actually be left alone by predators who think they would not be worth it. Because again, you don't have to go around understanding that, oh great, now I'm weakened, now I gotta really work for it. But yeah, the mammoths. Now, the final one on this list, the rock drake. The Rex level, or the Rex of aberration, as a lot of people love to call it, with the Reaper essentially being like the Giga of aberration. Yo, imagine a Giga on Arc aberration. Like, I'm not even sure where it would go. It would have to be like an element chamber or something, but nevertheless, let's talk about it. I'm putting it in the oil well basin because it's one of the few environments that I genuinely think can fit. Plus, again, I am doing different regions or different environments for, each monster. Plus, I just kind of wanted to use one of Wild's environments in this one, just like I did before the mutations. So the oil well basin actually provides a decent landscape for the rock drakes, as the oil-like area can, I guess you could say, be an area where they can easily use to hunt. Then it has its different times of the hot springs and stuff like that. And this could actually cause the rock drakes to likely migrate to some of the more cooler areas of the oil well basin instead of just being around. But overall, it does have a unique system of creatures that, honestly, let's just get into prey. Starting off with the Gelidons. These chill little salamanders. It's a wonder that they even survive down there. Same thing with the Harpios as well. They also inhabit the oil well basin somehow because they seem like they're more tropical fish-based creatures. But, there is some fish down in the oil well basin as there is everywhere. So I guess it does work. Crane draws, the safest creature from me because they've actually helped me out kick a Jarkin's butt like so many times that it's not even funny. So believe it or not, yeah, the safest creature on this list. But again, it's still going to be a prey item for the rock drake. Is the crane dolls. Now, the next one we definitely have here is Rompopolo. Now, this is pretty interesting because Rampopolo's skin is still poisonous. So it's very possible it doesn't have too many natural predators, but I do agree with Unnatural History's theory that Nerscylla could definitely be Rampopolo's only natural predator, with New Udra likely eating it on occasion. So in all honesty, it's very 50-50. Next one up is New Yale, and I kind of think these guys are a little bit safer. I mean, the rock drakes would have to literally go into the nest of New Udra in order to really like go ahead and eat like a good cluster of them. But again, I doubt rock drakes will really do that as they barely venture out of their own territory in all honesty. But next up, we have a Jarkin. Now, a Jarkin is actually going to be pretty interesting because in the fact that I do think the rock drakes are going to nest very similar and definitely have that whole communal setup, because again, that is one of the few reasons why rock drakes are probably very successful in their population in Arc Aberration, is because they have a communal nest setting. So a Jarkin likely is going to raid the nest trying to take an egg for a meal, and probably even an infant rock drake as well, but this is not going to go well. Even if a group of a Jarkin went to steal the eggs or try to snatch up a juvenile, not noticing the adults because they'll be invisible, they will likely get mobbed and swarmed and then become a meal themselves. Next up, we have Gypseros. Do I have to say it? Like, do I really have to? I mean, Gypseros is one of the few creatures that's willing to play dead in order to fool its opponents. That doesn't help an Arc. Now, Arc creatures be like, shoo, a free meal? Don't mind if I do. And we'll start digesting and munching on them. So, yeah, Gypseros is pretty much cooked in all honesty. I ain't even gonna lie to y'all. The next one is probably the most off-limits one. That is Gravios. I don't think the rock drakes have enough strength, power, and I guess you could say the attack potency to really harm a creature that's in the same tier as Devil Joe and is one of the few creatures that can kill it. A dominant life form that, in all honesty, has no natural predators other than the abomination abnormality that is a Cantor. And then we have competition. Now, this is only going to really be two, and I think you guys kind of guessed which ones it would be. Obviously, Nerscylla. Nerscylla likely will compete for Rampopolo and Gypseros, but again, I do think rock drakes will probably be a little bit busier hunting down prey like Celadons and maybe even a Jarkins as well, because again, I do think a Jarkins could probably find themselves in more common areas where they do bump into rock drakes, making them a valuable food source. However, New Udra is definitely going to be their predator. So believe it or not, New Udra does not have a problem eating other monsters. Now again, I will make the video discussing if this thing could beat Gravios or even hunt a Gravios, because if it can, this would then put it on the honorable mentions list to a creature that can kill and even, flat out kill a Devil Joe in general. But New Udra would definitely be able to eat a rock drake, even if it puts up a valuable fight, kind of like a Jarkin, but obviously we know how a New Udra dealt with that. So overall, I do think rock drakes do succeed in the oil well basin. Their camouflage or invisibility grants them an edge over a lot of their competitors, and they can likely easily avoid New Udra unless New Udra actually utilizes heat sensing in order to detect its prey. This is also one of the times I don't think rock drakes will actually be tamed, because I think some people will see it as very risky in order to even go near the rock drake's nest in order to try and tame them and then raise them up. Only probably like guilds and maybe hunters would likely do it, but again, that's going through an entire family of rock drakes just to get one and pretty much get it yourself. So it's probably not even going to be worth it at the end. So rock drakes will likely just stay as they are, but just wild creatures. But overall, if I had to rank how these guys do from worst to best, the Ravager does the worst because of its small size, actually, well, making it easier prey for the other creatures, despite their pack behavior. Mammoths are definitely a little bit higher, but again, this is because they benefit from a lot of symbiotic relationships with a lot of the hunters, the Popo and Gammoth. Then you have Deinosuchus and the Rex kind of tied. Deinosuchus a little bit higher because it really won't have any natural predators. And then Rex just because it's going to have a lot more competition. And then the Rock Drake does the best because of its camouflage, breeding habits, and its more communal setup. Plus, not a lot of creatures or a lot of hunters will be able to interfere with it. But that's going to be all today, you guys. And yeah, y'all have a blessed day. Peace.